So in this video, I wanted to do a quick comparison of two pens from Bic. One is called the Gel-ocity, the other is called the Velocity. And this is two of their mainstream pens, like kind of newer designs. The Gel-ocity is the gel pen, the Velocity is the ballpoint pen from the Atlantis family. You've probably seen these before. They're readily available at basically every supermarket and sort of office superstar store. Easy to find on Amazon and other places that you would buy pens, and they're pretty affordable. Like you could buy multi-packs of them for in the $5 range. The prices do vary though, because they vary between one another. The Velocity, you can buy an 8-pack for about $6, and in the Gel-ocity, you could buy a 4-pack for about $6. So whereas they're like neither is going to break the bank, there's actually a very large relative difference between the two. From the body shape, the two have some similar cues, but some differences as well. They both follow that newer Bic design, the Atlantis type series, as opposed to something like this, the old school Bic Crystal. That has been, these are still around, but the new Bics look markedly different from the old Bics. So they're both all plastic designs, kind of sporty. They have a large grip, multi-texture grip. It's essentially, it's not triangular, it is round, but there are 3 kind of finger holds, which I don't think anyone would stop and line up for, but they do exist. So it's sort of like a Lamy Safari or something like that, where it's trying to push you to have a tripod style grip, which I know a lot of people like. Plastic clip. Obviously, both are retractable. And then this one does have the full set, like the full length grip, as opposed to the shorter one. But you see multi-textures here. This one has this sort of hard plastic inset within the softer rubber. Both rubbers are really similar. It's not like one is spongy and the other is hard. They're both relatively hard. Again, plastic clip, plastic button. You do see some slight differences, like the Velocity has a wider button and the Gel-ocity has a slightly narrower one, but they're both sort of conical or like tapered down. The clips are almost exactly the same. These clips are fine. It's the kind of thing that's like eventually you will break this clip, but it's not, it's fine for day-to-day use. Oh, sorry about that. The hard plastic here going down into the grip. The grip is a little sticky. You can see it picked up some dust or whatever, but that happens to almost all rubber grips. Full length grip here. I think it's nice to have the full length grip. The pen, I think, looks worse. It's like too sporty or too high tech or something, but it is comfortable. When I'm holding these two pens, I actually do prefer to hold the Gel-ocity over the Velocity. Size-wise, essentially identical. Grip diameter, essentially identical. They're really quite similar. It's a little odd that Bic didn't just put them in the same body. Like, why even make the distinction between the two? Like, why not have the Velocity in the standard version and then the Velocity in the sport version? And that has that full-length grip, which is maybe more friendly for gloves or something like that. But that's just not how they did it. They wanted to keep the design separate, which I could understand, I guess. One of the things I noticed was that clicks are a little bit different. You'd think they would be the same like everything else, but they're a little different. Here is the Gel-ocity. Nice, clean click. Kind of a thock at the end. And then the Velocity. Kind of higher pitched. No thock. Kind of, sharper feeling. Anyway, super minor. It's just like, why would the two clicks be that different from one another? I thought it was interesting. Opening the pens up, we could see the difference here. The Velocity has an old school ballpoint refill, kind of a standard Bic type refill. And then the top little section screws on and off. That design is fine, but it means that you have to be really careful when screwing the front back on, since this piece can either cross thread or like kind of, if you turn it too much, it'll overturn and kind of mess the threads up, or it can sometimes crack. This is not really an ideal design, but it's not like these pens are, built to last 100 years. They're just kind of things you throw around day to day, probably lose before they wear out. Front of this one comes off as well, very similar. And now you see the big gel refill in the Gel-ocity, and it's a 0.7 millimeter. There's no model number from what I can tell. It's not like this is the type of refill that you would buy to refill your other pens, even though the size looks to be roughly that of a Pilot G2. I haven't checked to see if this would fit into a Pentel or Pilot body, but it looks to be a really similar design. So Velocity, skinny, classic ballpoint refill, Gel-ocity, standard G2 style gel refill. As far as the sizing goes, I wanted to remark on that. The Velocity uses Bic's sort of standard ballpoint sizing scheme, which is, I think, 0.7 millimeter or something like that, up to 1.6, and that's the bold, which I bought here. The Gel-ocity uses kind of standard gel refills, and I think it's mainly sold in a 0.5, and then this one, the 0.7, is sort of the mainstay of the line. They don't have a 1.6. A 1.6 gel pen, like like a Fude or something like that, would be gigantic. So like a 0.7 gel writes similar to maybe like a 1.2 ballpoint, and then you have the 1.2 ballpoint, which gets that sort of sticky oil-based ballpoint ink and makes the ball really wide, so it is really smooth gliding. Whereas gel pens are sort of inherently smooth on their own, which they use a water-based ink, so they don't have to go as wide to get the smooth feeling. And you could see the difference here. The 0.7 millimeter gel on the left is obviously much smaller than the 1.6 millimeter ballpoint on the right. Obviously, a lot of gel pens are sold in 1.0 millimeter. I just don't think Bic goes that high, at least from what I've seen. Do a quick writing sample. I have them both blue from the multi-packs I bought. They all come in all sorts of different colors. So first up, we have the Gel-ocity. So it's a nice, smooth gel. I really have no complaints with this. I don't buy too many Bic pens, and it's not because I don't like how they write. It's just because their pen bodies tend not to be very exciting. But the Gel-ocity is a good pen. It's a good writer. It's a nice gel pen, smooth, no problems with this, and it's quick drying, right? That's why, or one of the main reasons you buy a gel pen, especially if you're a lefty. Most people tend to gravitate towards Pentel Energel because they are so quick to dry, and they have slightly nicer bodies overall, or like some are slightly nicer, some are a lot nicer than Bic's, but Pentel is kind of, like if you were buying a Bic and a Pentel and was next to it, most people go ahead and get the Pentel, but there's nothing wrong with the Bic. Let's move over to that Velocity in the 1.6 millimeter. So this is a big, smooth 1.0 millimeter ballpoint. It doesn't have the sort of effortless glide of a gel. A ballpoint, again, it has that sort of thick oil-based ink, which has that sort of sticky feel to it. As you go wider, it doesn't have the level of resistance of an old school ballpoint. It doesn't feel like you're pushing it through mud or something like that, but it definitely has more resistance than a gel or a roller ball, which is like both of which would essentially be water-based inks. That said, this new style Bic Velocity from the Atlantis family or whatever is really quite smooth and has a really nice feel to it. Some people like the pen to have a little bit of grip, which is how this ballpoint feels. It's much smoother than an old school Bic Crystal. I don't know how old this pen is. This pen might be 25 years old. It's just been like kicking around in desk drawers forever. I definitely didn't buy this one recently, but when you're writing with this, you could feel it just sort of be even stickier than this big velocity. The velocity, I think ink changes have been made over the years. So Bic has made some updates to their ballpoint ink, which is my understanding. And then also in the 0.7 millimeter, it just doesn't have that big smooth glide of the 1.6. But here is some up close images of, or video of the pens. There is the Gel-ocity. There is the velocity. You can definitely see the difference in diameter, but you wouldn't think that this 0.7 millimeter is under half the size of the 1.6 millimeter. And that's just because gel pens and ballpoint pens write differently. I don't know why the measurements were done like that, but that's how it is. And part of it has to do with like when the water-based ink hits the paper, it reacts differently than how an oil-based ink hits the paper. So the water one can seem wider, even though the tip may actually be 0.7 millimeter. And there's that sort of old school Bic crystal design. So I think that should pretty much cover it. And I think now you should have a pretty good understanding of the differences of the Bic velocity and the Bic Gel-ocity. Obviously you could summarize it and say one's a ballpoint, one's a gel, but I wanted to kind of explain that and give something to people that don't immediately say, oh yeah, I know what a gel is, I know what a ballpoint is, which is not always clear, and it could vary from pen to pen or manufacturer to manufacturer. Between the two, I would say I would actually tend to go with the velocity. I don't really think it's the better pen. I just think I really like a 1.6 millimeter ballpoint, and Bic does those really well, maybe better than anyone else. Whereas there's so many excellent gel pens on the market, I kind of don't think I need another one from Bic, who I don't really associate with being a gel pen company. So the velocity is sort of like what Bic does well, even though it doesn't look like an old school Bic, like the Crystal in bold, which also has a 1.6, which I really like. The velocity is like a modern looking pen that does a nice job and has a really fun, really wide ballpoint refill that works all over the place. Thanks for watching.